Welcome back to Sunrise. The Babajide Ogunsanwo, Channel TV's data and information analyst, joins us next today. Thank you for coming on. As we focus on this figures about this importation, the ban it can bring in any used or new car through the land borders, and we've seen the reaction. We also heard customs shed some light on this one. But what have you found, having looked at all of these issues?
It's let's look at the history of smuggling, and the history of smuggling even goes beyond the birth of Channels TV. And so 3 decades ago, September 28, 1984, a group of women under the name of National Council for Women Societies visited Major General Buhari. And the visit was to talk about national interest and how it affects women. But that's not exactly what they found when they visited Buhari. They visited a president who was upset about smuggling. And so they couldn't have that time to discuss about women issues and national interest. What he had said, and I quote, was, "You women often run after prohibited goods and you live an ostentatious lifestyle." After that meeting, the discussion was so much about smuggling that the headlines the day after was, "Smuggling is Nigerian woman." Those were the headlines. Now, what the president then had connected it to was that he had said that women had influenced their families with a lot of demands, that it was now affecting them to use their incomes in other ways, and then it was fueling illegal border trade. So the headline was, "Smuggling is Nigerian woman." Not even smuggling is a Nigerian woman, smuggling is Nigerian woman. Now that was September 28, 1984. But here's the question. Is smuggling really a Nigerian woman? And I'll share that evidence with you to find out if he was right or if he was wrong, and the facts, I think, will surprise you. But before then, it is to look at how it all now connects 32 years after to today. So it seems that we are really fighting 3 wars, and Boko Haram is not among any of those wars. The first war is, there's a war between the seaports and the land borders. The second war is, there's a war between government wanting to make more money and families losing money. Now the third war is a war between families who are spending more money and families who think this is the time to save money. So let's quickly talk about the first war, the seaport versus the land borders. So here's the question on the lips of most Nigerians: how many vehicles are imported into Nigeria annually? Now the evidence shows that pre-recession, we're importing approximately 400,000 vehicles annually. Now these days, based on the evidence from the DG of the National Automotive Design and Development Council, Mr. Aminu Jalal, here's what he says. He says currently we are down to approximately 250,000 vehicles. That's the demand annually, from 400,000. So we've seen how demand has shifted post-recession or pre-recession to recession.
What's the percentages from the land and the sea?
And I like that. So, but before we go into the percentages, let's look at the percentages between imported used cars and new ones. So a second report comes out to say, hey, pre-recession, we're selling approximately 45,000 new cars in 2014. By 2015, that had dropped to only 15,000 new cars. Now follow this. So in 2015, we're selling approximately 15,000 new cars. Last year, we had, based on the FRS's report, 24,954 road accidents. In simple terms, you are more likely to find someone who had been involved in a road accident and find someone who had bought a new car. So
a brand new car, that is.
A new car. Now the numbers are down to 6,000. So we have 6,000 new cars being sold this year out of 250,000 cars. So in simple terms, it lets you see that 97% of vehicles on Nigerian roads are used. So here's what bothers me. And what bothers me is really not what is happening at the borders. It's that today we do not have, at least as at the last time I checked, there's no company in Nigeria who assembles used cars. The assembly plants here assemble new cars. And if 97% of those cars on the roads are used, it simply means that is where the demand is. So even if there is a ban on vehicles coming in from neighboring countries, will that increase the demand for new cars? Perhaps not. And because the demand for new cars is tied to people's income, so it's going to be hard for you to see the economy shrinking and the demand or sales of new cars growing. Perhaps there are only three ways that can happen, and that's for the economy to shrink and for new car demands to increase. Now, what are these three ways?
No, just a moment before you go to the three ways. The customs say that's not the idea. The idea is not for us to increase patronage of new cars. The idea is to ensure that we get more revenue because people are going through the ports which they claim they can control better.
So I like that. So we'll talk about the demand for cars shortly. So let's talk about revenue. And let's look at the profile, the real profile of the customs revenue. Now, before all of what I call all of this madness started, 2014, when everything seemed to be a bit more sane, customs then had said they had declared 977 billion naira in revenue. They were almost busting their 1 trillion naira target. But just yesterday, the spokesman of customs was here, Mr. Wale Adeni, and he said vehicle revenue accounted for, in that year, 144 billion naira. So Chamberlain, in simple terms, vehicle revenue, yes, is important, but accounts for only 14% of revenue that customs generates. Only 14%. But that's not what bothers me again. The 14% isn't what bothers me. What bothers me is we also have information about how much revenue the customs earn from semi-border.
All right, well, we'll take another break and see. We'll get back to the borders when we return.